Okay, so Councillor Hamilton, you've got a slight amendment to the officer recommendation.
Very minor.
So your amendment is just to the second point, that you want additional emphasis to the reward text on the sign?
Yes, but given the conversation that's happened behind closed doors, it may be appropriate to make an amendment to point 1 as well. But I seek some guidance here from the administration or yourself, Madam Mayor, in that it says here, request the officers communicate with the property owner regarding the planting of replacement street trees. I would suggest that perhaps that communication would come back as a negative to planting, and yet, as pointed out by my fellow councillor, Councillor Gangel, that there was an obligation for trees to be planted during the development of this site. So I'm a little bit confused about how we go about this, because I would like to see trees planted as a replacement.
So in that case, you want to move the point 1 as it's written, I imagine?
Well, it just says communicate, it doesn't say plant, so I would probably remove communicate and just plant.
Yep.
No, Your Worship, I think that can be solved by simply changing a few words that approves the removal of the base of the 2 vandalised street trees and advises the property owner that council has resolved to replace the trees. So it's council that's resolved to replace the trees, or council has, so it's not officers communicating that the trees will be replaced, as council has.
Okay, so Councillor Gangel, are you moving the motion with that amendment?
No, because I wanna speak against point 2, but I do have a question though.
Okay. All right, let's ask the question first.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious, because I know last week it was stated that there were some places in this development that were not supplied with trees. Do we roughly know how many they were that opted out?
Yes, I went down there, just off the top of my head, I think it was around about 5 properties.
5, okay. Yep.
I'd have to go back there.
No, that's fine. That's good. Yep.
About 4 or 5 properties.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Can I just ask another question? I know at the briefing we discussed that this particular road is a small, narrow road, and the signs that we normally erect are quite large. With the officer recommendation as it's currently written, is that a modified version of our current sign, or they'd be getting the huge sign at this point? So unless we specify...
That price is based on the current size sign that we've got down on some of our other sites.
Okay. So it would be an additional cost to us to have a modified sign installed?
If you wanted a smaller sign, it would be I would expect it to be a smaller cost.
Thanks. Okay. Does somebody have a motion they want to move?
Well, I can move mine, but I actually quite like, well, it's moving the officer's recommendation with a slight amendment.
Okay.
But I agree with Councillor Gangel's.
So can you read out what it is you're proposing, please?
Okay, so approves the removal of the base of the 2 vandalised street trees and advises the property owner that replacement trees, verge trees, will be planted during the 2019 planting season. And 2, installs a vandalism awareness sign. Shall I put small there? I think maybe a smaller. No. Installs a vandalism awareness sign with additional emphasis on the reward text on the verge adjacent to 14 Pride Way, Eden Hill, until newly planted street trees are sufficiently established in approximately 2 years.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion?
Oh, just some slight word alteration on the first point. It should read, approves the removal of the base of the 2 vandalised street tree and advises the property owner that council has resolved to replace the street trees.
That's fine.
You got that, Amy? Yes, that's
Sorry.
Okay, so
no,
Councillor Hamilton
that's
has moved that motion. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wilson, is there anybody against?
Yeah,
Councillor
just
Ganger?
the point 2, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Would you like to open debate, Councillor Hamilton?
Okay. Our street trees are a valuable asset. We are at this time trying to grow our urban forest and our tree canopy. So instances of vandalism really have a significant impact on the work that we do as a council. We need to send a clear message to those who consider vandalism to be the way to go, that when they don't get their own way, that it's unacceptable. And the only real method open to us is these signs that we put up, which are designed to indicate to people that vandalism has happened and that there are consequences, and those consequences are the embarrassment of having a large sign in the front of your property for 2 years. Now, we can't identify it conclusively the perpetrator of this act of vandalism. However, it doesn't mean that we should do nothing. We are absolutely obligated to the community to try and mitigate climate change by increasing our tree canopy. So this is a really urgent priority that we have on our agenda as councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I rise to second the motion moved by Councillor Hamilton. I agree with all of the comments that she made. It must be terribly embarrassing for the owner of this house to have the coincidence of somebody vandalising the tree shortly thereafter he'd sent quite strongly worded email to our staff suggesting that the verge was in fact his. And I think signs like this serve a very good purpose in educating the community that the verges belong to all of us. They're property that we own in common, and if we plant trees on them in common, we have a responsibility to make sure those trees grow to a good size and provide shade for all of us so that it can reduce the urban heat highland effect. I don't see it as a punishment, I see it as an education tool, and once the replacement trees have grown to a healthy state, then there will be no further need for the sign. And hopefully in the meantime, all of the people who see the sign will come to the understanding that people don't individually own the verges, and it's not their decision to make, it's council's decision.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
We're debating 10.62.
No, the whole motion, but Councillor Ganchel has indicated his issue is with point 2.
The objection is to the additional emphasis to the reward text.
No.
You
The
actually
recommendation.
make the sign.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ganchel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, certainly strongly approve of the replacement of the 2 trees. My position is that people shouldn't have an option to not have trees. They add tremendous value to streetscapes and to the surrounding area. Now, with that in mind, my concern is to the neighbouring properties. Now, we are in a climate that is very difficult at this present time with sales and rentals in the housing market. Now, these signs are particularly large signs. They're not, and they're designed not to be attractive. This area is a narrowly designed estate. I believe that it could have a roll-on effect, potentially affecting the values of other people's properties in the area. So if somebody's got their property on the market adjacent, for example, it could have a detrimental effect on the amenity of the area and the value for that property, thinking that there may be additional issues in the area with signs like that put up in the estate. Also in relation to looking for the places to be tenanted as well. So it's just my concern. Ordinarily, I do support this method of action, but in this location, with the narrowness of the estate and the potential roll-on effect, I'm not concerned about this individual property, absolutely no concern whatsoever with the detrimental effects that this will have to the individual property in question. It's the neighbouring properties and surrounding area that I have concerns that potentially signage such as this will have a detrimental effect on the surrounding neighbours, and I don't think that's fair in this situation.
Thank you, Councillor Gangel. Are there other speakers for the motion? Yeah. Councillor Quinton.
I would like to respond to Councillor Gangel's point. Nothing increases property value more than trees.
That's what I said.
So if we can protect every tree, and there is an educational tool to ensure that those trees are protected, then we must make sure that that happens. I think an ugly sign for 2 years will get the right message out to the neighbours that their property values will increase should they protect their trees and these 2 trees that we're going to replace.
Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Hamilton?
I concur completely with Councillor Quinton. I also agree with Councillor Gangel that we should be enforcing tree planting on our verges, because as Councillor Wilson has said, they are public property, the verges. They're not owned by personal property owners. And increased tree canopy is a enhancement to streetscape, and it is proven that in tree-lined suburbs that the property values do increase, sometimes by up to 20-25%. So after a couple of years, these property values will undoubtedly increase so long as the trees can survive any further attacks. And this sign is to make sure that people are aware that vandalism has occurred, and hopefully it will alert people to that vandalism and ensure that there are more visual eyes on the street, so to speak. So I would urge councillors to support this motion.
Can we split it?
Can we split it? Can
Yeah.
we do part?
Part 1 and part 2.
Councillors from
Not
the front?
now.
No?
Okay.
Okay, so we've got the Councillor Hamilton has moved, Councillor Wilson has seconded. All those in favour? Councillor Wilson, Mikachuk, Hamilton, Quinton and McLennan, and against Councillors Gangel and Brown. That is carried. 10.7, this is the council street trees at 118 Woodford Street, Bassendean. I'm conscious this wasn't at the briefing session. Would you like to speak? I'm conscious this wasn't at the briefing session. Would you like to speak to this for council's benefit?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. There's an officer's report regarding 118 Woodford Street, and in the attachments there's information in regards to the 2 trees. They're both eucalyptus roots, which are quite mature trees, which are growing right on the property line within the verge. The trees have roots which are growing into the property, and the property owner has advised us that they're damaging their property. We've had an arborist report provided to us indicating what we could potentially do, as we thought, or maybe there's an opportunity to prune some of the roots. The arborist report would come back and said no, that would be detrimental to the tree, and potentially the stability of the tree would be compromised, which would then of course be a risk because the tree is so large. And the adjacent, and then that's tree number 1, and tree number 2 is a similar situation, and it's compromising the existing retaining wall. So the arborist has suggested that the trees and the local government insurance services have recommended the trees could be removed and for new replacement trees to be provided.
I just had a question. So in terms of the arborist's recommendations, my reading of it was that they recommended 1 tree be removed at this point, but potentially that the other one could be left in situ for 2 to 5 years. But the recommendation has to look at removing them both now. I was just wondering what the thinking was behind
The rationale.
Yeah.
The cost of having a large cherry picker there is quite high. Also in the removal process, if you've got an existing trees that are already there, and then you're trying to bring down other trees which are behind them, the possibility of damaging those trees in the process. So there's a kind of a weighing up, if in 2 to 5 years time you've got lovely trees which are growing, and then you've had to have a cherry picker come in and you're trying to drop a large tree. Obviously you can't drop it on the property of the neighbour, you've got to drop it over towards the verge, and so you're dropping large branches which could then damage the trees if you just tried to grow. So
Thank
that's
you.
the logic.
My other question was around the claims that the property owner has made. So some of them were about the fence and the paving, which is visible, but then the insurance company's recommendations seem to be based somewhat upon a claim that the roots may be going underneath the house to the foundations and may be causing cracking of the home itself. Have we actually got any evidence of that, or is it just...
No, we haven't gone into the property itself, no.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
For this particular item, have we consulted with our lawyers to ascertain the potential that the client has or the resident has to implement any legal claim against us?
No, we haven't, but our insurance company has provided us with some guidance in regards to the issues associated with the tree. So normally, in normal circumstances, we've always taken the approach of wanting to try and retain the trees, but because of where their location is, it's right on the property boundary, trying to prune off branches. You know, for example, they've got a right to approach us and say, we would like you to prune off those branches which are overhanging our house. So that means we'd have to almost take a line straight up. The tree then is lopsided. If the roots going in there, potentially they could, if we didn't prune them, they could prune them, so that basically the whole tree becomes quite unstable. And so we don't see that there's many options for us in regards to these particular trees, whereas other cases which we brought before council, we have presented a case where we think we could retain those trees. These ones are a slightly different situation.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I was just wondering if Simon could show me which particular tree is tree one. I walk past this property every day, and
I think tree one's the northern tree.
Still a smile face. That's just, want to reflect.
Is it the northern one? Further questions?
Yes, could I just clarify if a conversation had been had with the homeowner, they want to remove both trees, or they're more concerned about tree one?
They're concerned about they're concerned about both trees, but we've had an assessment of, and so we've had an assessment of both trees as well.
Councillor Hamilton?
Can I ask I know that the insurance mentioned trees the roots going underneath the building and perhaps causing cracking in the building, but isn't that area clay anyway? So cracking can occur anyway in buildings in that area. So my question is, has a structural engineer done an assessment? Have these people got a structural engineer to do an assessment and provided us with that report?
No, there's been no structural assessment on their house.
So we have all these claims, but no structural engineer report provided by these people to back up their claim that the roots are causing problems.
No, there's no report.
Okay.
Councillor Brown?
Worst case scenario, playing devil's advocate, the roots are interfering with the structure of the home. It cracks the home, makes it inhabitable. What's the value of the home? What's the approximate value of the home?
Oh gosh, I
Looking at our liability.
I wouldn't know the value of the home, but they would submit an insurance claim to the town if their property is damaged, and then that would be assessed by our insurance company to determine where the liability sits in regards to the damage. In this particular case, our insurance company has made some recommendations to us, so therefore council would be going against an insurance company's recommendations. So then the liability falls onto the council to undertake repairs.
What type of trees are they? Just the
eucalyptus rudis, which is the river gum.
okay.
it's an endemic tree to our particular area.
Those age of the current trees we don't know.
Pardon?
The age of the trees we don't know.
Oh, look, they look like they probably could be 30, 40 years old. Just by the look of the image.
I've got a picture here if you want to have a look.
No, I've been there myself. But the river gum tree lives for centuries. My understanding is.
Oh no, not the river gum would probably, maybe. I would say it's probably maybe 50 years, something like that. On longevity of the tree would be about 50, 60 years, something like that.
And they have a radiating root system rather than a taproot system.
Yes, they do.
And to do nothing would be going against legal advice,
No, not legal, insurance.
which has provided some legal opinion,
Yeah.
not legal advice.
So the local government insurance services, they provide an assessment, a risk assessment on the tree, and then make recommendations in regards to it. So they've taken it purely from a risk perspective, and so that's why we engaged the arborist, because we thought we want to get some advice from a different perspective that could provide councillors further guidance. Maybe there's some actions that we could take that would be able to save the tree, which would then mitigate the risk. So that's why we tried to look at some other options. And so then we looked at whether we could look at root pruning, and of course they've come back to us and said to us that would make the tree unstable. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, any pruning up high would then make the tree lopsided from wind mitigating.
I understand. My neighbour just had the root system pruned on a ficus tree.
Yes.
That were in danger of coming under a house, and that was done successfully by an arborist. So those methods are available to us, but at a cost.
Yeah, yes.
And we'd have to go onto their property to do it because of the proximity of the tree to the boundary. That would take further inquiry, my understanding is. I just don't want to see us in a position where in 10 or 15 or 20 years' time, we've made a decision that will make the council liable to a settlement of several $100,000. So we've got to explore other options if we don't want to get rid of the trees.
Councillor Hamilton, did you have a question?
Yeah. In the opinion of the officers, if, for instance, council approves the eradication of these trees for the reasons provided, does this set a precedence for other residents to follow along the same lines and demand removal of birch trees for similar reasons?
We frequently get requests from residents to have a street tree removed, and council has in place a street tree removal policy and replacement policy, which clearly outlines what mitigating circumstances would be permitted, and in most cases we don't receive the reports because we are able to defend and protect those trees based on the council policy. Where there's a case where we need to get council's advice or direction, that's when we bring a report back. So I don't think it's going to taking this action, I don't think it's going to undermine council's position, because a lot of the issues that we have is the tree is dropping too many leaves, or the tree is I don't like that particular tree. That's the type of general request we get for tree removal in this circumstances. In this situation, I think it's quite clear that there's some issues associated with the trees in regards to its proximity. It's not at the centre of the verge, or it's right on the property boundary. The house is right there, and so there's some issues there that we're not able to mitigate without undertaking any actions.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
I was just going to advise Mr. Stuart Dawkins that according to the Department of Natural Resources in South Australia, they say that the Eucalyptus rudis can live for 500 to 1,000 years rather than 50. So it has an order of magnitude of 10. It's probably worth one.
Okay, Councillor Hamilton.
Following on from...
Radius of about 5 metres.
Another question for the officers. So, following on from what you've just said, have you actually ever had
something similar in Success Road about 4 years ago, and it was a melaleuca quinquenovia, and which is smoke that's from the trees that we have in this town, and the adjacent property owner said it was lifting their wall, and so we got some advice in regards to what we could do, and in that situation we looked at, we made a suggestion or recommendation to council, which was accepted, which was to have, instead of paying for the cost of the removal of the actual wall, the council would contribute to providing, it's like instead of the wall going right down to the ground, we'd have it like a bridge going over the section of the grid system. And so that was what the resolution was. The property owner never took us up on that offer, and the tree remains there in its current situation.
So what's the, sorry?
No, sorry, I was just going to ask, so there seems to be a bit of uncertainty around the impact of the trees. Like obviously the paving is being disrupted and the wall to a slight extent. But my reading of this is that the insurance advice is based on an assumption that the tree is impacting on the house itself, which is a much more significant problem than if it's just the paving. Is there a way that we can get further clarification on that and get an accurate recommendation based on what the true situation is that the tree itself is causing?
Well, we probably potentially need to have an independent assessment then of the house, which is going to potentially cost council some money to do that. So I wouldn't be able to give that advice tonight.
Councillor Wilson?
Have we applied the valuation methodology to these two?
Yes, we have.
No, the officers.
I think in the Arborist report, was
It's in the Arborist
yeah,
report.
I think in the
Yeah.
Arborist report.
Yeah,
it was.
the
I think one of them was 53,000
Yeah.
or something similar to that.
Yeah.
and
For one or both of the trees?
Just check that that's
One.
yeah, on one. Yeah.
The one that's recommended by the arborist to remove that?
Yes.
Councillor Hamilton?
Sorry, just through the chair, it's the amenity value was $53,000.
Councillor Hamilton?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at about $3,000 to remove both trees or one tree?
3,000 for both trees, but that's the officer's recommendation.
Okay. So, is there any potential to spend that money on, like you've just explained about a property some years ago or whatever it was, can't remember when you said, where a solution was found? Is it possible to spend that amount of money on some sort of remediation that might fix these people's paving so it doesn't lift like that?
I think there would need to be, in order to explore that, the Local Government Insurance Services report doesn't provide me any more information than I've already got here. So the only thing I could do would be to go back and seek some further clarification from Local Government Insurance Services about their investigation, on-site investigation. They may have gone inside the property, but
Okay. I think we may have exhausted questions. So we've just had one potential pathway if people don't want to support the officer's recommendation. Councillor Hamilton and then Councillor Quinton wants to say something.
I'd like to move to defer this so that officers can actually
I like to visit it.
chase up more information for us.
Were you going to say something as well?
I was going to move an alternate recommendation, but if the other councillors want to go and have a look at it, I've had the indulgence myself today to go and have a look, and the owners allowed me into their property. And so I have seen how bulging the root is and how it's obviously going under the house. So if the other councillors need to do that, then I would support them doing that.
Thank you. So Councillor Hamilton has moved to deferral. Is there a seconder for a deferral? Councillor Gangel, is there anyone against? All those in favour? And that is carried. So in the interim, we would like a site inspection and a follow-up with the insurance company. Is that?
And could that come back for next month's?
And
Sorry, Councillor.
and the various aspects that we've questioned tonight, would the staff be able to follow up on some of those questions and those avenues?
Yes, we'll definitely follow up on those avenues for you. I'm just not sure about the timing in regards to our agenda because it's quite tight in regards to when this agenda, when we finish tonight, and then when the report needs to be brought back to our CMC meeting. So the timing might be quite.
Okay, so I guess we're aiming for next month, and if that's not possible, then we're. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to item 10.9. So before you sit down, Mr. Stuart Dawkins, this is the item relating to waste collection services and FOGO. Would you mind just giving a quick introduction to the purpose of this particular report and what is likely to follow next month?
Yes, thank you. So this report is providing Council with an update because there's been quite a lot that's gone under the bridge since Council first resolved to apply for the Better Bins program, which we were successful in receiving. So the report outlines that we applied for those grant fundings. We were successful in getting the grant funding for Better Bins, which simply at that stage was the yellow bin, just a normal garden waste bin, and a red bin for waste refuge. Then there was a council resolution suggesting or recommending or committing to, should I say, committing to going towards FOGO and to seek the EMRC assistance to process that, and then look at a third party to potentially process that material. That last week, the EMRC Council resolved to commit to that process, and there's the council resolution provided in the report. The town has also engaged CGM Communications, and they are undertaking some research to assist the town to change community behaviour and help us to reduce the amount of contamination that goes into that will go eventually to our FOGO bins. And so that will help us with the implementation of the program. So next month we're looking at this report outlines in broad terms actions that will be undertaken and that we are currently undertaking, and the tentative timelines for the implementation of the rollout of the Better Bins or 3-bin program. What we're doing at the moment, we've got some meetings with the MRC. I've got one potentially this Friday to work with them to do with the financial model that I'd like to bring back to council, and I'll ask them whether they would like to come to this meeting, next council meeting, to present that financial model, and so there's an opportunity for councillors to seek clarification in regards to some areas. That will probably be under a confidential item because of the nature of the financial matter. And so that's basically where we're at. It's just basically giving council an update. We're also looking at going out to tender, so this report is recommending that you authorise us to commence that tendering process for the supply of bins. But also there's been some discussion with council about kitchen caddies. And I know there's been no final decision on that, which is fine, but what we're going to do is invite tenders for it. We'll get a cost for it. You don't have to accept the price if you don't like it, if you don't want it, but we will provide you with a price so that then you've got an understanding about what the costs are associated with rolling that out. So that helps us all understand what our costs are.
So just before your question, Councillor Gangel, you mentioned the MRC coming potentially for next month's meeting. Would it be possible to invite them to the briefing session rather than the meeting itself?
Yes, I think I'd be happy to.
Thank you. Councillor Gangel?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just note here that it is our intention at the current stage to do general waste fortnightly. I don't suppose there has been any guidelines from the state with their proposals. That is the state recommending that across the board. I think they want it sort of, universal. Is the state recommending general waste fortnightly pickups?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So everything which is going to potentially be smelly and won't be very nice will be in the weekly pickup. So the organics and the food scraps from your home will be in the weekly.
Except for nappies.
Yes,
So-
can we just, sorry, I just wanted to make that point that what about nappies? Because if someone wanted to have their bin picked up on a weekly basis because they have nappies, because nappies for 2 weeks would not be nice for the homeowner or their neighbours.
No, it's okay for the week. To be honest, I hadn't thought about that point.
I wonder why.
Could I suggest that the town explores cloth nappies?
Good luck with that.
So the purpose of tonight's report is not to determine any of those nitty-gritty. That's the report that will come next month.
Yes.
Correct? Yep.
You could hit the road.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So will those tender documents come back to us before they go out to market?
The intention is that the normal process is that we would call tenders, and then the report will come to council for your consideration. So basically, we're looking at the contractor providing the supplying the new mobile garbage bin, supplying the new lid, supplying the parts which then connect all those lids, collecting those, assembling all those bins, and then distributing those bins to the property.
So if I remember correctly, we had a request some time back for tenders to councils at least to see them before they went out.
Okay.
So not necessarily
it's
coming
not
to the
normally-
council meeting,
we
but
don't normally, of course council can ask for it, but the normal process was that the money is allocated in the budget, and that authorises us to go out to tender, and then we would bring that tender evaluation back to council for your consideration.
no, I appreciate that. I'm just remembering that there was a resolution passed that councillors would like to see the document in case there was some feedback on things that were missing or expectations that weren't included. Is that other people's understanding?
Yes, it was. Specifically, it goes to any assumptions within the tender about the number of bins. So will the number of general waste bins be included in the tender document, or just general specific? Right, and we're yet to make a decision about the number of general waste bins that we will be.
The tender has been written up in such a manner that says that these are the estimated numbers, and that the purchase order will be determined once a contractor is appointed.
Thank you. And what are the underlying assumptions for the number of general waste bins?
So the waste officer has been working with our corporate services area. We've done some audits out in the field. And we've gone in and done some inspections. So we've done inspections, we've done correlated that with our rates, and also our contractor sewers have taken some reporting as well for us, so that we can firm up our numbers. We have actually also written to some property owners who have acquired a bin and then in the past have asked us to be collecting it, so they're getting an extra service in that case. So we've now written to those people and advised them that that's not a service that we provide, and that we'll be charging if they want that ongoing service, we'll be charging them for a second bin, or else they have to dispose of that.
So Councillor Wilson, is your concern around that potentially there may be some people that aren't able to manage with a single bin that's going to be the planned standard rollout, and that there may be a need for additional general waste bins? Is that your concern?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, consistent with all of my contributions on this topic today, it is my intention to move at the appropriate time an amendment to any motion that has an effect on the outcome, that prior to the rollout of the bins, we would give our residents the opportunity of saying, oh, by the way, I have 6 people living in my house and I would like 2 general waste bins rather than the one that would go to my neighbour who is a widow, for example. So that prior to the rollout, we are giving people informed choice, and so that we do it once and we do it right the first time.
Any further questions?
I have a slight amendment to the officer's recommendation,
Okay.
which was an extra dot point.
Would you like to read it out, Councillor Hamilton?
So it is the officer's recommendation as is, and then the last dot point I've added is point 6, requests officers investigate cost estimates and seek out grants for printing of UV rated, visually relevant pictorial stickers for each bin type that will contribute to the public education process during the 3-bin FOGO rollout.
So can I just ask a question? Because one of the discussions that's been occurring has been about communication and education. And I know that the EMRC is planning on seeking funding from the Waste Authority, and yet that's yet to be determined how that would be allocated and distributed. But is this something that potentially we could include within that application to the Waste Authority?
Yes. We did actually apply for a grant. We weren't successful for that bin sticker program, unfortunately. I don't recall the reason why we weren't successful, but and I think there's money in the waste strategy progress works scoping project. Sorry, I was just trying to think of the right terminology. Scoping project. We've actually identified that we would list some funds in there for the bin stickers. So.
Councillor Hamilton, thank you.
My recollection is that we did allocate $37,000 to stickers. However, we only did that for one bin type. We didn't, which was the yellow bin. We actually didn't expand it to the other 2 types of bins. So, and the reason I shouldn't go into my reasons, but basically because we have already a budget allocation for that, I thought this was something worth pursuing.
Okay, so Councillor Hamilton, did you?
Sorry, had Councillor Hamilton moved the
So yeah, she's moved it with point 6 added in.
Yep.
We don't have a seconder yet though. Will you ask your question or?
I'm seeking to have a variation on point 4.
Okay, so let's just see if we've got a seconder for the motion with the amendment. Yeah.
Sorry, excuse my. I'm unaware if you could just advise me of the difference between an ordinary sticker and a UV rated sticker, Councillor Hamilton.
Outdoors.
Oh, thank you. That's all I wanted to check. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we've got a mover of this motion. Do we have a seconder for the motion with additional point 6? Councillor Mikachuk. Now, Councillor Wilson, you had a proposal to modify point 4.
Yes, I'm seeking Councillor Hamilton's leave and Councillor Mikachuk's leave to modify point 4 to say requests officers prepare a tender or prepare tender documents to be presented at the next councillor meeting for council approval.
Does that delay the
what
process?
impact that might have on timelines?
Yes, so on page 50 of the report, in April it says invite tenders to the supply of bins and lifts, and then in sorry, just looking down the list. Then in July, the council looks at appointing the contractor. So there's a 3-month gap. There's a 3-month space there because we have to advertise for approximately 1 month. The evaluation process generally takes a month as well, and then putting a report to council. Of course, by the time we put it to the council in early July, you don't actually adopt it until the end of July. But it's really important that we actually be able to invite those tenders and get some preliminary feedback as part of the budgeting process for the 2019-20 budget.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
So can I just ask the staff a question before we move forward with this? My understanding of a motion that I moved in March last year was that for big tenders like this, the scope of works, the scope would be provided to councillors. I mean, apart from all the tender documents, would it be difficult for you to provide that scope to councillors in a short timeline.
No, fine. We could email it to councillors.
So may I ask Councillor Wilson, if that was sent to all of us for feedback, how would you feel about that?
Well, I guess it's a question of when we have the discussion about whether we're going to ask people how many bins they want. Whether we have that discussion now or whether we have it next month. I've tried as best as I can to flag my concerns about that, and I'm happy to have that argument now or next month.
So can I just ask, how would that impact? Because at the moment, if we were to go down the path you're suggesting, we still don't have an indication of exactly how many bins we would need and how many people would put their hand up to say, yes, I want an additional bin. So I imagine there's some flexibility in the tender document that if we order this many to this many bins, it'll be produced at this price.
We believe we've provided some flexibility in the specifications, so that it's saying this is how many bins, this is how many bins we require for the 140s, and we've provided some indications to other additional bins that we may require, but it's all dependent on the final purchase order that we issue. My understanding from Councillor Wilson, what I'm hearing, is that his position is slightly different, and that we should be going and seeking clarification before we place the order as to what we want to, as what bins we will be delivering to those residents. I'm correct.
Well, just to address Mr. Stewart-Hawkins' concerns, no, my concerns are that we don't land ourselves in a situation where we're locked into a contract that has no flexibility in it, and should we require an extra 800 bins to meet the needs of larger families, that we're not able to do so. That's the problem that I'm seeking to avoid.
Okay, so Councillor Hamilton, we've got a mover and a seconder for your motion with the amendment. Councillor Wilson has proposed a change to point 4. Are you willing to accept that as the mover?
From the explanation provided by the officers, I'm not entirely sure that it makes a great deal of difference, given that we've been assured there's flexibility in that. But
really?
But
a tree lives for 50 years, it lives for 500 years. I want to see it.
Councillor Wilson.
To a degree, I would like to accommodate Councillor Wilson, but I think that the scope is less onerous on the staff than the tender documents.
So we've got a commitment that the tender documents will be provided for councillors to provide feedback on.
That's next month, is it?
No.
Feedback.
I think next month what we can provide is what we propose the program will look like, the implementation. The fact is the bins can be purchased from the preferred supplier list that Wellga provides. So pick and buy, done. I think the proposal is, with going out for tender, is that everything is wrapped into a tender, caddies, etc., etc. So I think probably getting our heads across the implementation plan might be useful, and then we can see where the various elements fit in. Do we agree with the approach that's been proposed? And then I think if there's in principle support, the tender will fall out of that.
Yes, but we make decisions as a council at council meetings, and the reason why we all passed a motion saying that we want to see the scope of works before they go out is so that we don't find ourselves caught in a situation where something's already gone to market, a problem is then identified, and it's very hard to pull back. So if and when I see the scopes of work, there may not be a problem at all, but I don't know that that's the case at the moment.
Simon, from a timing perspective, is there any issue if next month we bring back and discuss the implementation plan, the costings and the scope of work around the tender document? Is that an issue?
I think we're just in regards to the timing of it. I think we're if we're trying to have a November date and trying to get some information into the budgeting process, April's really is getting down to the line for us.
So is this something we can incorporate in our concept workshop in the next week or two?
John.
Concept workshop, yeah. So, sorry, are we looking at trying to bring the actual tender document back to council as a report?
Well, I think it's about the implementation program, because there are many elements to the program that sit outside the tender, and then that provides the broader context, because we also talked about evaluation and community education, other aspects, and then the tender focuses on purchasing certain items like the bins. But to give councillors the context that they need to understand what the broader program looks like, whether there's in principle support for that, and then the tender is almost a subset.
Yes, exactly. That's correct. Yeah, that's what we're looking at trying to do at the next month's meeting, is bringing back that report like you described, plus some of the MRC financial model that they've got to provide to us.
Yep. So would we do that at a concept workshop or briefing session?
We're going to try to. So the agenda for the council briefing closes next Wednesday. Next Wednesday. So I've got a meeting on Friday with the MRC. So we've only got really a couple of days to try and kind of tighten this up a little bit. So it doesn't give us much time. So I was looking at bringing it back to the MRC, to the council directly, but
be worth discussing. I think probably needs a bit.
So I'll try and do that.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
Okay,
So based on those timelines, there's information going to come back that would satisfy councillors either at concept workshop or at the next briefing session. Is that correct?
That's right.
On that basis, I would prefer to just move the officer's motion with my amendment.
Alright, so we're considering 10.9 with an additional 0.6 as circulated by Councillor Hamilton. Did you second that, Councillor Kitchett? Was that you? Okay, so obviously someone against. Would you like to open debate, Councillor Hamilton?
Okay, our community has heard about the 3-bin system now for some considerable time. Obviously, councillors around this table are all very keen to get some movement on this. I would like to thank Councillor Quinton, because it was her suggestion very early on after our election that got movement happening on this before the grants closed, but then they were extended. So basically it's very, very pleasant to see that we actually have some movement happening here. I'd also like to thank our 2 EMRC member councillors who have worked very hard to ensure that FOGO is a thing happening at EMRC. That's been a long time coming. Based on the assurances given to us by the administration, I am confident that councillors around this table will have more input into the implementation of the program. And so I would encourage all councillors here to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Mikachuk.
Yes. I won't add too much more because I think Councillor Hamilton has covered most of it. I certainly think everyone's well on board with the implementation of FOGO. I think the sticking points sound like the provision of information to council, which we've kind of discussed prior to this debate. So I'm certainly confident that there's assurances that there'll be the opportunity to discuss the implementation at length. And yeah, I think I'd encourage councillors to support the current motion.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. My concern is with item 4 in the motion. I'm happy with all of the other constituent parts of it. We as a council collectively resolved that staff would bring all scope of works to us for approval before they go out. Should we pass this motion as it's currently framed, we would be going against what it was that we've previously resolved, which doesn't make any sense to me. Councillor Mikachuk said that people understand what's going on with FOGO. I can disagree with that based on the significant interaction that I've had with members of the community, most recently on a Facebook post that I put up about what's happened at the MRC. People do not know much about this at all, and what is very important is getting the community education right. You know, and for me, having the community education right and having the community engagement right is the number one determinant of the success of this program, and ensuring that there is good public acceptance of the program and that we minimise contamination. And an important part of that, something that I've flagged at every single time this topic has come up, is that we explain to people that not only is your general waste bin going to get smaller, your general waste bin is also going to be collected half as often as it currently is. And I would invite anyone to tell me that the community, or at least more than 50% of the community, understands that to be true, because I don't believe that they do. And should the community absorb the knowledge that not only will their general waste bin get smaller, but it will be collected half as often, some people will say, my personal circumstances are such that that's going to be a problem for me. And it seems prudent to me that we would engage with people before the bins get dropped off to say, well, what are your circumstances? Do you think you're going to be fine with this? We think you're going to be fine with this, but if you have a very large family and you think you're going to need a second bin, we can drop 2 bins off instead of just 1. And the reason why I think it's important to do that at the start is because the research that was done into the Southern Metropolitan Regional Council by Catalyse recommended that. In fact, they looked at it all, and their key recommendations from the rollout of the FOGO program in the Southern Metropolitan Regional Council was understand your community property types and demographics, ensure all staff and stakeholders are engaged, aim to get it right on day one, rollout. Try to be flexible for residents' needs where possible. Right? This is the lessons that have been learned, and I think it would be foolhardy of us not to embrace those lessons in the way that we roll this out in our community. It may well be that the tender document provides enough scope, I'm not sure, but...
That's your 3 minutes, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship, but I'm not going to vote on it without having seen it.
Thank you. Speakers for the motion? Councillor Ganjel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now, I will apologise if I'm incorrect in my understanding of the conversations that were taking part. My understanding is that the scope of works will be emailed to councillors for them to view prior to anything further occurring. So so councillors from this meeting will have when they're ready an emailed copy of the scopes of work. There's also been suggestions to have a workshop on this matter as well. I agree with Councillor Wilson. I believe very few people in the community know of the change coming or understand of the changes that will be coming very, very shortly in November, and they are big changes. People don't realise change until it's upon them. So I absolutely agree that communication is absolutely paramount to this. Keeping timelines is also very important, as well as knowing what the budget implications are coming into the next financial year budget. Therefore, I would support this motion going through so we can continue to work towards our rollout, work towards our communication strategies, and we do have a staff member on board. I believe is it Ari?
Yeah,
Ari, ready to go, as well as the communications consultancy. So I certainly believe, and I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Wilson, that communication is absolutely paramount, because very few residences realise the changes that will be happening in November. Thank you.
Speakers against? Any other speakers? I'd just like to speak very briefly. I couldn't agree more with Councillor Wilson saying that the success of this program is going to be dependent upon our communication. I think that is going to be what determines whether or not we get a FOGO product that has enough or minimal contamination to give us a viable product at the end that can potentially be sold and have that circular economy that we're aiming for. There's been a lot of discussion around that. We've already committed significant resources to communication, and it's something that I think we're going to need to continue to on an ongoing basis. I take Councillor Wilson's point that Council may decide that it wants to ask our community whether they want to have a second general waste bin. However, at this point in time, our community is not ready to answer that question. We need to first of all do the education so that people know what they're being asked about and can make an informed decision about whether or not they think they're going to need an additional bin. But the reality is we need to put a tender out now so that we can budget for doing this next year. It does not eliminate the possibility of asking that question at a later date. There are well-preferred suppliers that can give us these bins. So I don't see these two things being incompatible. So if there is a desire to ask the community once they have had the communication and education they need to make a decision, this particular motion does not prevent us from doing that at a later stage. Councillor Hamilton?
I believe that you've covered it.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so all those in favour, that is Councillor McLennan, Wilson, Ganjul, Mikachuk, Hamilton, Quinton and Brown. That is passed unanimously, surprisingly. Thank you. 1010, our mid-year budget review. So we had a lengthy conversation about this last night. Are there other questions that have come up since then from councillors? Councillor Ganjul.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just one follow-on question that I had from last night, and I would just like to, which officer will be answering? Sorry. Yes. I don't want to say your first name. I did the surname. Sorry. Brazil, Miss Brazil. Sorry, I didn't want to be informal and say your first name, Miss Brazil. You mentioned that that there was a downturn in development applications to the town, which had contributed to a reduction in income of $17,000. I was just wondering, is it possible maybe Mr. Reid is better able to respond? What is that made up of exactly? Is that just people wanting to do extensions to their houses and stuff, or is that developers putting in applications?
Yes, it's the reduction was due to the interim rates, which are issued after there's additions made to a property or a new property built that was on vacant land previously, and then they would have to be re-rated with a property value.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I apologise for not asking this question when we had our briefing last night, but I've since that briefing received an inquiry from a member of the community in relation to the boat ramp that's currently out of service. And so I'm just wondering, do we have a reserve account, or are there funds in contingency to do the repairs necessary to make the boat ramp operable at the moment?
I'm sorry, I'm not aware of which boat ramp you're talking. So that's the one that David Dwyer's been working on a plan for?
Yes. There's a building reserve account. I don't recall how much money is available there at the moment.
Are you able to give us an update on where that project's at? Do you have that at the top of your head?
Yes, we're going to start with the project.
Well, I know that our engineer was having a look at solutions to be able to repair it and reopen the ramp.
Yes. I don't have any further updates than that I gave the week before, which was basically that we had to close the boat ramp because of the erosion that had gone underneath the existing concrete. So I don't have any more.
So in terms of us being able to repair the ramp, it doesn't look like we've made funds available in this budget review. No. So if we're going to be repairing it, what would be the recommendation?
There's some treatments that we potentially are looking for. It's basically looking at a rollout map that we could actually buy and then roll that out into the water area. But we haven't finalised getting those prices in yet, and we would need to get the Department of Conservation, Biodiversity Conservation Attractions approval to make those changes, and the Department of Transport. So there's kind of quite an administrative process that we need to go.
So you'd be suggesting putting a proposal that would then be funded at the 2019-20
Yeah, well, I think by the time
budget.
we go through that process, it's probably going to be a budget.
It's not
financial year. 33 months away.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Is there a repair option that doesn't require those approvals?
Possibly, yes. We could possibly look at some other options, but the erosion occurred because of the low tides, which then undermined the existing concrete. So we have to wait for those low tides once again. I think then to try and get into the area, so it's a little bit problematic. I think to try and do the repairs to the existing area.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
I note that we've still got the history book in there somewhere. Can we delay that and fix the boat ramp instead?
I think the history book is right at the very final stages. We had a discussion around that this morning when we were looking at the low and medium priority projects. I'm not sure there's any money there to be saved.
It doesn't look like they've spent hardly any.
There are 3 other variations that I have flagged in the briefing last night, and it's my intention to put to the rest of council that those 3 elements of the Your Move project that I've previously flagged might instead be redirected to finding an engineering solution to open the boat ramp sooner rather than later, as there are a number of people in our community anxious to use it.
Councillor Hamilton?
I'm sorry, I do have a question which I missed it last night. So on the second page of projects, under environment, I note the first line has 40,000 for street tree communication behaviour, which is fine. And I also note that further down, again, it seems to be duplicated, and I was curious about that. Again, 40,000, just 2 up from total environment.
One's a behaviour program, one is a selection of trees.
Oh, here.
Yeah, I see.
Research program.
Yes, for tree selection. And this is a comms. I'm assuming.
Yes, I do see the duplication on the list. Without having further information on hand, I can't tell you if it's actually, this list is created from manually.
Okay,
yeah.
So can I leave that with you? If it is a duplication, would you notify all councillors? Thank you. Like Councillor Wilson, there's a couple that I might put up to come out as well. I'll just see what Councillor Wilson's are first.
So Councillor Wilson's are the bike locks, the e-bikes and the cycle without age project.
Yes, and that those funds there, by being converted into providing a very timely engineering solution to make the boat ramp operable.
What about the light orders?
So just before we move on to that, I've just been speaking to the CEO about the jetty. Would you like to share what you were...
So I understand it was earlier this financial year that there was grant funding made available to the town. One of the things that would be useful to pursue is perhaps going back to state government to see if that provision still existed.
I believe that was grant funding to do a design for a much larger project, and so that wouldn't have actually fixed the jetty. What I'm asking for instead is just to fix the jetty so that people can use it.
No, the boat ramp.
The boat ramp, sorry.
Yeah, no, I
So
agree.
no larger in scope than it currently
No, I
is.
think that's what is being proposed, to see whether there's still funding there that could be used for a repair purpose rather than a design of a brand new
Well, I'm sure Simon would have already explored that option to date and would have put that forward.
So whether that option is still available to pursue?
Yeah, so we were successfully getting the grant funding to do some redesigns, and there was a resolution from council not to pursue that. So, but I haven't gone back to the Department of Transport again to ask whether there's an opportunity because of the last resolution. So, if council wished me to do so, I'd be very happy to go back to the Department of Transport to see whether there's any opportunity.
No?
It's our duty.
Councillor Hamilton?
Sorry, my recollection is that money, 90-odd thousand, was just to produce a plan, and the plan included impinging on green space to create more car parking, and it was a much bigger and grander plan, and on top of that, there was also concerns that we would have had to modify the road and the roundabout to accommodate bigger boats. So it was quite clear this council voted unanimously not to pursue that particular grant.
I don't think that's what's being proposed. I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's money there for boating infrastructure. We now have a boat ramp that's not usable and to explore the option of whether that money could potentially be redirected.
So essentially the funding source, and I guess what we have at the moment is essential infrastructure or amenity that's not available to our community, and it looks like we're closed for business. So I'm suggesting we need to address that as a priority, and the state government may be a funding source, particularly if there's an option of a alternate scope of work, but a contribution of 50% towards the funding.
Yes, but should we be unsuccessful in securing that grant money, then we will have made provision ourselves to open our piece of infrastructure for the amenity of our community. And should those funds be unspent, then they will be surplus funds that could be reallocated at the next budget. I still intend to move that way.
Okay, is there anything else that councillors want to raise before we have a look at making some decisions here?
Sorry, can I just clarify where that money would have come from to fix the boat ramp now in the first
We'll
place?
have to allocate it at some stage.
Sorry? One person?
So the money will now have to come from municipal funds.
Yeah.
To fix the boat ramp.
We don't even have a plan at this stage, do we?
Well, can I also specify then that it's the minimalist plan to do the minimal work necessary to open it in the shortest amount of time and not require approvals from outside government departments?
Okay, so was there anything else people wanted to flag before we progress? No? Councillor Hamilton?
So are we now going through items? I was going to let Councillor Wilson go first to items that he wants to pull out.
That's the totality of the changes that I said.
Okay. So are we going to vote on each of these individually?
I think we might do that quickly. Maybe we don't need to debate each one.
What? Vote on what individual?
The items that are being pulled
So
out.
bike locks, e-bikes.
Oh,
and
yes,
cycle
sorry,
without
yes,
age.
okay, yep.
Everybody happy to do that?
What are we doing? Sorry.
Okay.
The Councillor Wilson's suggestions to be withdrawn from their budget to be reallocated for the opening or the
I think
Well,
at this stage they're just
Yep,
withdrawn.
okay, withdrawn,
It's
okay,
not
yep.
like
Okay.
a process for
Okay.
Councillor Wilson, are you standing up?
So
Hold on a second, Councillor Wilson, please.
Sorry, just to clarify that I'm not necessarily against those other items, but I don't think that enough of a business case has been presented at this stage, and I'd be happy to reconsider them in the following budget.
Thank you.
okay, I was given to understand that these items that might be pulled out, that we would actually vote on them individually, because there are some that I agree and some that I don't.
We will do that. If everybody is happy. Okay, in that case, the first one was the bike locks as part of the Your Move project, which is only $2,175. Councillor Wilson has proposed removing that from the budget. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Hamilton, is there anybody against? All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. So the bike locks, $2,175 is out. The 4 e-bikes, which is also part of Your Move Bassendean at a cost of $10,000. So Councillor Wilson has moved to remove that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Gangel. Anyone against? Okay. Do you want to speak to it or just put it to the vote very quickly, please?
There is no clear business case or rationale attached to the purchase of these bikes. It's proposed in discussion that they be allocated to the staff to use. I think that would be great going forward. It would be honouring Councillor Bevan Carter's time as Mayor to see our staff on bicycles. However, I'd like to see those bicycles tied to the reduction of at least one vehicle.
Councillor Gangel?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Look, I still haven't been given clear understanding of exactly who would use the e-bikes and in what way the e-bikes will be used. I don't necessarily disagree with the motives behind it, but I don't think we have a strategy for the use of these e-bikes, and whether or not it would be potentially public use as well, community use, or is it exclusively to staff? Storage also hasn't been able to be provided as yet. So at this stage, I think we're not quite there, ready to roll something out. I prefer to have a plan in place. I don't need a business case as such, but I just need a plan to understand exactly who would be using them and in what circumstances. For example, if you're going to the depot, is it a requirement that you take a bike to the depot? Or I think as last night, Councillor Quinton suggested the youth officers could actually use them, and probably would use them, to come to the administration building, but then are they held at the youth centre? Those questions haven't been answered. I would prefer, before we allocate $10,000, to actually have an understanding and a plan to that, and I think, as Councillor Wilson has indicated earlier, there are other pressing needs that can go to community benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quinton, did you want to speak for it?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gangel and Councillor Wilson. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but we're in the midst of a climate emergency. Every single day there's a headline of cyclones bashing our coasts, of bushfires destroying native bushland and flora and fauna. And every tiny little bit that we can use to reduce our carbon emissions is something we absolutely need to do yesterday. This is one of those things that we as a community will show in the leadership, will add to the list of things that we are doing in this tiny little town that is making a massive difference in terms of reducing our carbon emissions. Every little bit counts. We have an EV charging station, which I'm very proud of. We've gone to FOGO, which I'm extremely proud of. We're reducing our plastics use, which is one of the first councils in Western Australia, if not Australia, to do so. So we are on a roll. We are on a roll in our ability to be environmentally conscious. I'm not sure what Councillor Gangel needs. Does he need a roster of everybody's name of who is going to use this? But I can absolutely guarantee that those bikes will not be sitting there day on end, and if they have to be given to the youth officers to ride up and down the road instead of driving, then so be it, because as far as I'm concerned, every tiny little bit of carbon that we don't put in the atmosphere is one better step to having a planet that is not going to be cooked.
Do you know, if you were Councillor Gangel, you would have used the on a roll and the bike to your advantage more than Did you have a question, Councillor Gangel?
No, I've got a question, yes. No, I've got a question, thank you very much. I just want a clarification, thank you very much. Just want to know whether or not Councillor Quinton cycled to the council meeting tonight.
Not tonight,
No,
because...
every little bit.
Councillor Gangel, she has been cycling, she's been setting a fantastic
It's also night time, and I preserve
The environment's still the environment.
Councillors, Councillor Mikuchu, would you like to speak?
Yes, please. I'd certainly like to second Councillor Quinton's sentiments. We as a council, prior to me getting on, have valued sustainability, have valued, even in recent discussions, reducing our carbon emissions, have taken multiple steps and invested a huge amount of time in being leaders and modelling in this respect. I can tell you the amount of short trips that I do in a car that are embarrassing, and if we can put something in place to allow people to use their cars a bit less, and a model for the community what we'd all like to see, we'll all be better off. I think it's really important that we show leadership in this regard. It couldn't be more vital, and I'm sure if we all had access to e-bikes, we might have more car trips as well, and we only need to look at your move and other things that we are investing in. So we're investing in these things, yet we're not prepared to make these basic changes that we can do within our own group of people that we immediately work with. I'd really encourage people to support this. I think it's fundamental to practicing what we preach, and maybe I need to get myself an e-bike so I can ride in a dress and heels to a council meeting, because that is always also a barrier. I'd urge people to support
that's how John
it,
feels.
it remaining in the budget.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we should do more than show symbolic acts of leadership. I think we should make transformational change throughout our entire organisation, which is why I would like to see these electric bikes tied to vehicle reduction. Because the reality is, we currently purchase our electricity from a coal-fired power station in the town of Bassendean, something else I'd like to discuss at another time. And so these will be coal-fired bicycles, because we are buying the electricity to operate them from a coal-fired power station. So what I'm interested in is a genuine systematic reduction in our emissions, which means electrifying our fleet, moving to renewable energy purchasing, and replacing vehicles with bikes. But to bring forward a single line item without any business plan attached to it, without any program attached to it as a mid-year budget review is undercooked. It's underdone. We will have the proper budget in a few months' time that gives staff enough time to put forward a properly considered proposal which is actually going to reduce our emissions rather than just adding 4 more coal-fired bicycles to the existing fleet we have.
Okay, so we'll put that to the vote. So just so we're clear, if we're voting for it, it's to remove it from the budget. Against is to keep it in the budget. So those in favour of removing from the budget, so we've got Councillor Wilson, Gangel and Brown. Those for keeping it in the budget, Councillor, all the women, Councillor Mitchell, Hamilton, Quinton and McLennan. So that remains in. Cycle Without Age project. So we have a proposal to remove that from the budget. Is there a seconder to remove it?
No.
Councillor Gangel. People against, I'm imagining. Yep, okay, so Councillor Wilson, again, would you like to speak to this briefly?
Yeah, and again, briefly, is all the detail that we've got on this. We've got a single line of text attached to what should be a properly costed and thought through proposal. I would like to know what the recurrent operating costs are going to be. I would like to know what the replacement schedule will be. I would like to know how much recurrent costs we're going to be hit up for in the 2nd, 3rd and 4th year of the operation of this program. I don't think it's unreasonable for us to be provided with that information before we make a decision. To say that this is an urgent budget line item that must be included in a mid-year review, I think is an absolute furphy. We are having a full budget in a matter of months, and that provides ample scope and opportunity for staff to prepare a properly thought through business case for us to consider at that time. I'm not against the idea, I just think this is undercooked, and currently we have a jetty which is not operational, and we have people who are hoping to be able to go out and use it, and I think we need to find funds from somewhere so that we can make our jetty operational. And this particular project can wait a few months and be put to us with all the necessary detail.
Councillor Gangel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Wow. Okay. So this one, I have not even an image of what we will be obtaining. I did ask and did request for an image to be provided.
It was
so
today.
In the entrance.
Sorry.
It was emailed today, Councillor.
Emailed. Oh, my apologies. I haven't seen my email. Now this is just let's clarify this. It's $18,000 for one bicycle. 18,000, and then that doesn't include any shelter for it. That is $18,000 for a leased bicycle. That is for some period of time that we have no idea what the period of time is for. That means if the organisation, and I certainly wish them all the very best, I do like the concept, but if the organisation goes belly up, that is not an asset the town owns for $18,000, that is an asset of the organisation for $18,000. I subsequently asked if we just wanted to purchase, say we wanted to purchase another one. We wanted to purchase 2 because one would be in hot demand, and I believe potentially it would be. We have no idea how much an additional standalone bike would cost. We have no idea how we would implement the process again. So and I think they're terrific ideas, they're wonderful ideas, but we just don't have plans put in place on how we're going to implement them. And for $18,000 for a bicycle, I think we need to have something a bit stronger in place with the costing, and obviously with the life expectancy and the like of this asset that will belong to somebody else, not the town, because we're leasing. I'd also be curious to know, just with the e-bikes, whether or not it would be a requirement on staff to use them. But I'm all about cycle paths and bicycles and all that sort of stuff. But there's also a budget bottom line that needs to be looked at, and for $18,000 for an asset we won't own, we will lease it to another company, and we don't know the ongoing costs. We don't know how much a standalone additional purchase would be. I think there's a few items that we just need to look at, so councillors are aware of what they're committing to. Thank you.
Just before anyone else speaks, Mr. Haggett, are you able to provide, because I think some of the claims that Councillor Gant has made that may not be entirely accurate, are you able to provide some clarification around leasing and those kind of?
So the initial upfront cost is to have the trishaw manufactured. It will be owned, as Councillor Gangel said, by the Cycling Without Age organisation, but it'll be provided exclusively to the town for the use of the town. The $15,000 is the cost for the construction of the bike, and there's a annual agreement fee of $3,000 for the organisation to come in and provide the service. So that includes all of the mechanism, the whole of the machinery of the organisation.
So, just want to clarify that is $3,000 ongoing annually as we have this bicycle in our town.
So that was for the training, the insurance,
ongoing
the
annually,
repair, all of
for
those
as long
things.
as we determine.
Yes.
It's an annual agreement.
Yes.
And so we would be re-entering into an agreement on an annual basis, as long as council was prepared to fund it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just to clarify, we own the bike or we don't own the bike?
No, the bike would remain the property of Cycle Without Age.
Okay, so we've had the mover and the second to speak for removing it from the budget. Is there someone who'd like to speak for retaining it within the budget? Okay, any other speakers?
Yeah, I'll speak for retaining it. Okay. So I guess we've spoken about different values, and we're considering lots of different items to do with what we provide people that are, I guess, the whole width and breadth of our community, and part of that includes people that are ageing. I think this provides a really great opportunity to address actually lots of different things. So not just people of an older age group, but addresses some of the fundamental issues and challenges such as sense of connection and connectivity, and meaning and purpose. So I think that's really, really important. And it also addresses a lot of the elements in regards to sustainability that we spoke about before. I'd just like to mention to councillors that this is probably the third occasion these items have been raised. So these items didn't just come to council this evening. There were several discussions in which we considered an allocation for these funds into the budget. So I think that's really important to note. We've talked about the need for provision of business cases. I think that needs to be measured with what we're expending on each item, what the human and staff costs are in preparing and presenting that. And I think it's really important that we balance all those various elements together, because in fact they are actual costs that the organisation incurs, including the time spent. And yes, just to make the point that this is, not the first time these items have come up for consideration. So there have been several discussions around this. So I think from an environmental perspective, it's positive. From valuing older people in our community and also facilitating that sense of connection, it provides lots of, it provides all those different elements. So I'd really encourage councillors to support it remaining in the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Mikachuk. Do you have a question, Councillor
Yes, just very quickly, Councillor Hamilton made reference that there was an image of these.
No, it's in the emails.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to clarify it wasn't in the attachment.
Apologies.
Thank you.
I
Wonderful.
referenced the wrong thing.
Thank you.
And so just to clarify, the staff member who's been involved in this project isn't actually one of our staff, it's the Your Move officer who's been doing a wonderful job, but they probably also, she's been providing the information, so it's someone slightly external to our existing staff.
Can I just be able to ask a quick question of the staff? If we got this program up and running through this outlet, is it possible to expand the program ourselves by getting bikes made at Tadwar in the future or along those lines?
Yes, I'm sure that's possible. It may be an alternative rather than an expansion of the existing program. We could be looking at augmenting it with a new program.
That's what I meant.
That certainly is possible. Can I just add also one other comment that I didn't make in the previous comment that I made, is that one of the advantages of the system is that the bike is provided in a pristine condition at all times. The maintenance of the bike is undertaken by the organisation, and as part of the agreement they guarantee not only the pilots that they will have the qualified volunteer riders, the pilots of the vehicle, but they will also ensure that the facility, the vehicle, is provided in a sound condition every time it's expected to be used in the town.
Sorry, I just want to clarify that, Mr. Haggett. So you're saying that the company provides the people that will be cycling them?
Correct.
Oh.
No. So they're volunteers from our community. They would be trained by...
Well, that's different to what was there.
Okay, so we've had Councillor, sit down for a moment, Councillor Wilson. Did you want to speak, Councillor Hamilton? You had your hand up a minute ago. Okay. I'd just like to speak quickly. There have been some comments made about this being an urgent item coming to the mid-year review. I think we actually elected to bring these items to the mid-year review. We gave our staff instructions that we wanted these particular possibilities as part of the Your Move program to augment that to come to the mid-year budget review. I do agree that some of the information has been a little bit late in coming with the detail, but I think that is not a reflection on our staff. That's part of the nature of having a Your Move officer stationed at the town that's a little bit disconnected from the rest of the organisation. I think Peter and myself had the opportunity to go to the demonstration, and unfortunately other councillors weren't present, but that did answer a lot of the questions that are being asked tonight. But I think there is a huge opportunity here to promote the town in a positive way, and I think if we requested the staff to look for opportunities for sponsorship or seeking donations for this, it would be a very attractive option for funders to have their name on this. We talk about showing leadership and being innovative. This is a really good opportunity to do that. We want to have a connected community, we want to have an age-friendly community. The outcomes that this program would deliver would meet those objectives, and we would be the first local government. I think Fremantle is also looking at it as well to deliver this as an opportunity for our community. So although I acknowledge that some of the details have been a little vague for some of you, I feel that those details are there, and even the ongoing cost of $3,000 would be a very worthwhile investment in delivering the outcomes that we have agreed to that we want for our community. So I would advocate for retaining this in the budget at this point in time. Councillor Wilson?
No.
You want to speak as well?
I would like to speak for the motion. Yeah.
Removing from the budget?
For removing it from the budget. I don't think anyone here disagrees with the sentiment of this wonderful project. I think it sounds amazing. Community connectedness and getting our older people up and down our hill all of the time would be a wonderful asset. But the numbers don't stack up for me. I don't understand how it is that we would be spending $18,000 and we don't even get to own the rickshaw. I don't understand why it cost $15,000 for nothing, because we are spending in addition to that, another $3,000 for servicing and maintenance and keeping it in spick and span shape. So the numbers just don't stack up for me. I don't understand why we can't be purchasing the rickshaw for $15,000 We're about to purchase 4 e-bikes that we're going to keep for $10,000, and yet we're just wishing away $15,000 and we don't even get to keep it. I don't understand. The numbers aren't stacking up for me. I would like us to explore the possibility of purchasing the rickshaw that we get to keep, and if the program wants to take another $3,000 a year off us to do that, then let's do that. My other point is, we're going into winter. I don't see that a lot of volunteers would be putting their hands up to be cycling people around for free in the rain. So that's why I think this can be delayed until next year's budget.
Okay, and Councillor Wilson, would you like to speak again?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes. So I guess I'd like to echo the sentiments that Councillor Quinton just raised. I have a lot of unanswered questions about this. I don't think it's unreasonable that a report be prepared for us to be considered in the way that all other business comes to us before we consider it. And also, just to frame it in what we're doing here, this is a mid-year budget review, and this is not a new budget to consider all these new ideas. I see the point, Your Worship, that you made, that we asked for a menu of possibilities to be brought before us, and that's why I'm only objecting to these 3 elements. I think all of the other options that were brought forward stack up, make sense, and will be a great benefit to our community. But what has happened during this mid-year review process is that we have an asset that is broken, and we don't have any funds set aside in an asset replacement program anywhere to fix that asset and make it available to the community. And that's the purpose of this mid-year budget review. It's to go, oh, here's a cost that we haven't made adequate provision for. We need to find money from somewhere to make provision for that cost, and what I'm attempting to do is identify a source of funds for projects that are not urgent. I'm not saying they're not necessary, I'm just saying they're not urgent, so that we can fix the boat ramp. And that's all I'm seeking to do here. If we don't make savings from somewhere else, we're just going to deteriorate our budget position, and I'm happy to consider any other savings councillors want to put forward, but I think it would be nice to fix our boat ramp.
Okay, so all those in favour of removing the Cycle Without Age project from the budget? So we've got Councillor Wilson, Ganjel, Quinton and Brown, and those against is Councillor Mikchuk, Hamilton and McLennan. So that is carried. So Cycle Without Age is removed. Are there any other items, Councillor Hamilton?
Sorry, Your Worship, I don't think that's the case. Don't you need an absolute? Oh, you need an absolute majority to keep it in, not an absolute majority to remove it. Is that both? Both. Oh, it's both. So therefore, we haven't actually made a decision then, because it was 4-3.
Then that's the same for the other ones.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I thought it was 5 we needed, but anyway. Okay. I was thinking of the 9 when we had 9 councillors.
It's the same for us.
When you had
Councillor Hamilton.
Okay. I would like to remove lighting audits for Bassendean, Jubilee and Ashfield.
Yes.
It's 20,000, 0 has been spent thus far. I totally agree with Councillor Wilson that if we're going
so hold on a second. So you've got that item.
Lighting audits for Jubilee.
it's lighting audits, Bassendean, Jubilee, Ashfield.
Councillor Gans, you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question on that. My understanding is, I understand potentially Jubilee's not as big a concern because they've recently upgraded their lighting there, but my understanding is the lighting in Ashfield is particularly aged, as well as the football oval. So I would have thought the Ashfield one and the one at Bassendean was a requirement, because I think both of them are in decade or more old. So
is someone able to make a comment on that?
So the project came from the Audit of Facilities report that Council adopted last year, and was one of the priority projects that was approved by Council at that time, and was as a consequence of the consultants undertaking the work that they did. They defined this as a priority requirement.
So, just so I know, just before we vote on this, it may well be not a requirement. What will it actually give us?
It will provide us with sound understanding of the existing lighting across the ground at all of the 3 reserves. So we'll have a good understanding of whether or not our lighting currently meets the minimum Australian standards for sports grounds, yes.
It's just for the reserves, correct?
For the active sports grounds.
So how can we because my understanding, sorry, I just want to, if I could just ask some further questions on this, because my understanding at one of the Bassendean Oval meetings we've had recently, there was discussion in relation to the fact that the lights weren't really match practice lights either. So I'm just wondering, if we already know that, then what is the $20,000 going to tell us that we don't know?
Well, in terms of Bassendean Oval, we're aware that the lighting is not adequate for competition purposes.
Yes.
But is it adequate for training? We're unaware. So it will provide us with a better understanding of the level of lighting. Now there are Australian standards as to the light lux on the reserve surface. And that is the purpose of this lighting audit, is to provide us a grid pattern of the lights across the reserves.
So, and then also, will it tell us if, like, how spill and stuff is an issue? Is that the sort of thing that will say what the requirement is will it tell us the upgrade requirements and the costs and stuff like that?
Yes, it'll provide us with costs for upgrades.
Okay, all questions
Yes,
exhausted?
thank you.
So Councillor Hamilton, you're proposing removing this item, so for all 3 reserves from the budget, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Is there anybody against? Councillor Gandry, Councillor Hamilton, would you like to speak to it briefly?
Okay. I'm proposing that we have more urgent matters to attend to, and that this lighting audit can easily be put into the budget for the coming year, that it's only 3 months away before we're addressing a new budget. So I don't particularly think that this lighting audit, which hasn't even been begun, needs to be addressed in this current period. And I would like to see that $20,000 saving put towards more urgent projects in need of immediate attention. As Councillor Wilson has identified earlier, the boat ramp down at Pickering Park. I mean, this $20,000 could go some way towards that. I have no idea how much it will cost, but if we're going to identify savings, this is an obvious one. It's sitting there, it's not been done, it can wait 3 months. There's no urgency to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I already know that the lighting's inadequate, and I don't need to spend $20,000 of my neighbour's money to tell me that. If and when we get to the stage that we are providing adequate lighting for the users of that oval, then the plan, the lighting plan that gets done does all of the modelling of what the lux will be, and that needs to be tailored to the particular use as well, because different sports have different lighting requirements. So I would prefer to have a conversation with the users of those ovals to find out what their views are, just as our council had a conversation with the Bassendean Junior Football Club and the amateurs when we upgraded the lighting at Jubilee Reserve. That their inadequate is not in question, and the remediation of that doesn't require a lighting audit. It just requires the will to spend money on providing new lighting.
Councillor Gandry?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not particularly welded to the audit. It's something that I believe our facilities, it is a requirement that we have, that we can plan into the future what's required. Certainly from my personal experience, I know when you're looking for funding coming election time, or if there's grants, certainly with the last state election, we picked out anything that had lighting on sports reserves or parks or anything like that, and we funded that because it's great community initiatives to be funded, and from a political sense, you actually get great value from the announcement. So I think it's one of these things. Again, I'm not welded to doing it right now, but I don't want this to be lost, because I think it's very beneficial to be able to have a document and to have a line item coming from that document that says this is the cost to get to the standard of what that particular sporting club requires. Not only that, obviously the the football club and also the soccer club in Ashfield that use the facilities are ageing. The infrastructure, the lighting infrastructure, has been there for a considerable period of time. So I understand there may not be the concerns with Jubilee, but I certainly think the Ashfield and Bassendean, it is very good, and to have that done and to have that opportunity for not only obviously grants but also funding come political time, because if we've got projects, line items, they're the ones that are likely going to be picked up. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, so unless you'd like to speak to it again, let's just put that to the vote. So those in favour of removing it from the budget, so we've got Councillor Wilson, Mikachuk, Hamilton, Quinton, Brown and McLennan, and against is Councillor Ganges, so that is carried. So the lighting order is removed from the budget. Councillor Hamilton?
Okay. The Town of Bassendean history book, it's 26,000, only 4,700 has been spent thus far.
Can I just clarify though, is that we haven't actually paid the work that's been done?
So yes, the majority of the cost comes in the publishing, so in actually printing the book, and that's where that cost will come in. So we're at the point now of hitting the button on the printing.
But we haven't hit it yet.
No, not yet. But we've done everything up to that point.
So would it matter if it's held until July?
God, it's going to be an Asian history book.
Sorry?
It would be good to complete this project.
Again, we come back to its, well, this is a matter of debate, but what the priorities are, it's up to councillors to decide.
What's the value on that item? Sorry, I haven't got it.
It's $26,000 has been allocated, 4,796 has been spent.
Can I just ask a question? If there's a bill that needs to be paid, whether it's that money's allocated now or 30th of June, it's still going to be money that is required to be expended.
Yeah, we haven't actually contracted a printer yet, have we?
No, we haven't raised an order yet.
But it's still going to need to be paid at some point.
But you haven't, have you actually authorised the printing yet?
No.
Right, so they haven't authorised it yet.
Okay, so Councillor Hamilton is proposing removing the book from their budget. Is there a seconder? Okay, so that is that lapses.
Okay. Last but not least, I have one more. Yep. Which again, I need a bit of clarification on this. The Economic Development Plan, which is 32,500, 2,733 has been spent thus far. Is there any ability for savings in that? Because we have certainly not spent much of that money, and
we haven't spent much of it. Well, we haven't raised cheques for it as yet. But can I say that the economic strategy is coming to council next month, so it's all but complete. So there is, I'm not sure if there's committals for it, but certainly there is a great deal of work that has been undertaken.
I think it's just a timing issue. The payments haven't been made yet because it's almost completed.
That's correct, yes.
So are we leaving that, Councillor Hamilton, or are we...
Reluctantly.
Okay. Is there anything further? No. Okay, there's nothing further. So in the current officer recommendation, there's just a correction for the date. So it currently says the 22nd of March.
Sorry, Your Worship, is this where I move a motion to say that the savings that we've identified can now be allocated to fixing the boat ramp expeditiously?
So do you want to, have you got that? The surplus. Any savings identified from... What was that, Councillor Quinton?
I'm just relaying something to Councillor Wilson.
So I'd like to move that the savings that we've identified be allocated to repairing the boat ramp. In the process, that is as simple as possible, that will require the least of...
Can we maybe request a report from them on what the options are?
Well, we could request a report about a lot of things too, Your Worship, but we're happy to make expenditure items without reports for some things and not others. I just want to make it clear that we do the bare minimum necessary to make it operational again in the shortest period of time.
Councillor Gange, do you have a question?
Yes. Well, I'm not sure of a question, but just relying. I think it's about 38 $100,000 we've made in savings, so not a drastic amount. And as Councillor Wilson has argued continuously tonight, making decisions without actually knowing the outcome and the costs of something. I think it's very important to actually know that. So whilst I'm 100% in agreement to get that opened up, I also would like to know what the actual cost implications are to council to do so.
Mr. Stewart-Dawkins, is it possible to get a report to council? No. May?
Really? How long has it been closed for?
During Wonder Realm it was closed, just before.
Go on, Mum. This is ridiculous.
I have confidence that the CEO will deliver a sensible, prudent, costly and timely solution, and so I'm happy to move that those funds be made available and that the works be done.
Okay, so we've got a mover. Is there a second for that motion? Councillor Quinton, is that against? Councillor Gangel?
I'm against as
Yeah,
well.
okay. Councillor Wilson, would you like to speak briefly or
not? We've demonstrated time and again this evening that we're happy to spend funds based on a single line item in a budget. I don't think it's necessary for a simple repair job to see a full report about that. If the funds are inadequate, then I'm sure that staff will let us know that more funds are needed and we can then reconsider that at the budget. But if the funds are adequate, the work can simply be done just as it will simply be done with the bicycles.
Councillor Quinton?
I am voting for this because I do believe that we should be able to have a report back for the next month's meeting. I don't think that that's impossible, given that this has now this ramp has been closed for a month. It's not new, so surely we have some information. I think that perhaps that if with the indulgence of Councillor Wilson, that we say that the report come back for next month's council meeting, and I don't think that that would be unreasonable request of staff, given that this has been around now for 4 weeks, and we understand the angst that had been created in the community with the closure of it and the questions that still abound because of it. So I think that would satisfy Councillor Gangel's request to have a report, just that it could be done for next council meeting.
Councillor Gangel?
Yes, thank you, Worship. So yes, I would be happy for the next council meeting, but you got to bear in mind that whether or not, when you say council meeting, do you mean council rounds of meetings? Because next Wednesday the briefing agenda closes off, so you're actually living a very short time frame in that regard. But the other reason why, I mean, we're going with abandonment here. We're just saying here's some money. We have no idea what the outgoing cost would be. Do a quick nasty patch up job that will open our ramp up. Maybe we'll open our ramp up for a week or two. Further collapses or something else happens, and then the impost is huge. And why do we get to that part of being a huge impost after a couple of weeks of reopening it? Because we didn't do our due diligence. We're here for good governments, and our due diligence is to know exactly what the issue is, exactly what the problem is, exactly what the implications are on council between spending $38,000 for a patch-up job or potentially spending more than that, $100,000, $200,000 to actually do it correctly and properly, so it's there for the longer term and period of time. Thank you.
Can I just pause for a moment? Can I have what the actual motion is?
I can tell you what I've put down.
Okay, that would be wonderful.
Right or not.
Thank you.
I have that savings identified be allocated to repairing the boat ramp at Pickering Park, and that a report be brought back to council at the April ordinary council meeting.
Yes, I would like to add further words, that a report be brought back to council if the funds allocated are insufficient for the task. If a simple repair job is able to be done within those funds, then I think our CEO and her team of dedicated workers are able just to do that work.
So Councillor Quinton, is that what you're understanding, what you were seconding?
Correct.
Yep, Councillor Gangel. Okay. Speakers for the motion?
Just very quickly, I take on board what the CEO said earlier about potentially accessing grants. I would assume that it may well be partially town funds, partially grant funds, whatever. That comes back to the sources that you can locate. So I would like to see this money put towards that, whether it's adequate or not for the repair of the boat ramp, I have no idea. But I think at least if the money is put towards that, we have a stepping stone towards getting it repaired. I would hate to see this drawn out for years and years, as per what we've seen with some other repair jobs like the spillway.
Other speakers? Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak against it. I certainly take on board everyone's desire to have this resolved quickly, but I think in expending that amount of money and in such a short amount of time, with already asking so much of officers, that it just doesn't require the amount of time to give it due consideration. And we spoke about that, the importance of that today, and yeah. I think it warrants a proper report with the adequate time to consider actually what is being done. Yeah, so I'll be voting against it.
I agree with Councillor McCutcheon. I think we definitely need to address this issue as soon as possible. I have no issue with allocating the savings towards repairing the boat ramp. However, I think that we should have a report come in April and then make a decision about what options we have presented, rather than just doing the quickest repair job that we possibly can, which may not have the best long-term outcome for our community and may actually cost us more money in the years to come by having to do another repair or replacement at some stage in the future that otherwise could be avoided if we make a good decision in a few weeks' time. Councillor Brown.
Just a question. So that money, if that's the case, that money would remain unallocated?
Yes.
No, what do you
The
mean?
savings, the $32,000 savings.
If this motion's not successful.
That's right.
That would just remain unallocated?
Yes, but we could have another. My issue with this motion is about a decision being made in the interim without it coming back to council.
And just another question, the report coming back next month doesn't satisfy.
So Councillor Wilson.
Unnecessary delay. Just get on with it.
Okay, so Councillor Wilson, did you want to speak again?
Thank you, I do. I'd like to thank Councillor Gangel for being the only person in debate who has been internally consistent in the arguments that he's put forward this evening, and I say that recognising that I've not been internally consistent myself in the arguments that I've put forward. Our council staff repair footpaths, they repair roads, they repair all manner of our infrastructure without bringing reports to us. This is different from a new program that might have recurrent costs. This is just a repair job. If the money that we've allocated is insufficient for the task, I'm sure that our CEO will let us know and will bring back a report to us outlining what the problems are and what the deficits are. I'm confident that our CEO will also look for all sorts of grant opportunities that might be available to us to offset some of the costs, but delaying it for another month just so I can see a report when I haven't seen a report on some of the other things that I've passed tonight, I don't feel is necessary, and I urge councillors to vote for the motion.
Okay, so putting to the vote the resources that are being saved going towards the boat ramp and giving the CEO authority to authorise a repair job. All those in favour? Councillor Wilson, Hamilton, Quinton, Brown. Against? Councillor Gangel, McCutcheon and McLennan, so that is carried. Okay, so back to the officer recommendation. So we now have, with the adjustment of the dates...
Sorry, Your Worship, just from a legal sense, the entire liability now, should anything occur to anything that's approved, is with the CEO, from a liability point of view, with that motion.
As with footpaths and roads and everything else we do.
Delegated authority.
It's not a footpath or a road.
Yeah, it's a boat.
Okay. Yeah.
Concrete.
Okay.
So just with that minor adjustment to the officer recommendation, so changing the date to the 26th of March, we've removed the lighting audit, the bike locks, the cycle without age project, and we are allocating funds that are saved towards the boat ramp. Do we have a mover for the recommendation? So Councillor Wilson moved, seconded. Councillor Quinton, anyone against? All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. 10:13, River Parks Committee.
got a question. And I was there, but item number 1, received the report on a meeting. Obviously that wasn't part of the recommendation. What exactly does that first item relate to?
We're just acknowledging that we got the report from the... Oh, minutes should be, shouldn't it? Received the
Well,
minutes.
it just says the report, and I'm just
yeah.
wondering what that relates to.
Sorry, was that
Yeah, just item number 1 on the committee recommendation in this agenda. It just says receives the report on a meeting of the River Parks Committee meeting. So it doesn't talk about the spillway or anything. It just says a report on the meeting.
So it's the minutes, I think.
So attached to this evening's agenda is the actual committee minutes. So you're receiving that.
So should we receive the minutes?
It just wasn't clear to me, and I feel like if I'm voting them, if that's what it was meant for.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have a question?
Oh, yeah.
Councillor Hamilton?
How to frame this? When we're doing any new projects in Success Hill, would the officers agree that we have to do consultation with the traditional owners when it's a new project at Success Hill? Yes? Is that a yes? Okay. However, when we're doing a repair, why do we require to go and do consultation when it's just a repair of something that's already existing?
Pass the motion saying
We have a Section 18 to undertake routine maintenance and to undertake some construction work down there. The collapse of the spillway wasn't anticipated, and the proposal to build an alternative design that we're anticipating that potentially may need to have some consultation undertaken because it's it's within close proximity to the river, which has significance to the Aboriginal community, and so that's the basis of those comments.
Okay, so following on from that, just to explain, my concern is that the degradation of the riverbank seems to be accelerating. So the longer this process goes on, I'm concerned that we're delaying a repair. So how long would the consultation take? That's of interest to me.
Past experience is that once we've got the money in the budget, then we have to, if we're consulting with the elders, then we would normally take around about a week because we consult with them in different
Oh,
families.
that's okay then. No, okay. I'm getting different feedback here.
Can I just bring everyone's attention back to a motion that we already passed several months ago that doesn't form a part of this report, but we passed a motion where by staff were asked to go and talk to the working party of the Wajak people through Swolsk.
Point number 7.
I forget how many months ago that was. Does anyone know? I think it's at least 7 or 8 months ago. I'm just wondering why that work hasn't been done.
I don't think it does it relate to this particular item?
Yeah, specifically it was in relation to the school.
Yes, and specifically it was to go and present to the Wajak Working Party the nature of the problem, to say, oh look, this site of great importance, spiritual importance to you as a people, is in a parlous state. There is some work that we need to undertake. Do you have any views about that before we commence planning? That was what we
I'll follow that
passed.
up. I'll follow that up tomorrow.
Thank you, that would be great.
You can put that.
Councillor Mitchell?
If there are no further questions, I'd like to propose some amendments. But I apologise that they're not quite reflected on the piece of paper you have, so I might just refer people to the original motion and slowly.
Recommendation?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, if that's okay.
So Amy, just
So
yell out if
on
you're...
the second page, please.
but it's pretty close to what you've got, but not quite. Okay. So, okay, so we're at the recommendation. So point 1 should read, receives the minutes of the meeting, if that's okay, instead of report.
Point 3.
Isn't that already in there?
Okay. And or is so that it can come directly to
okay,
council.
sorry, that's just small.
It's very tiny.
Which line is it?
It's item 3. In red. I've got it in
So
red.
point
Oh
2 is
yeah,
as
so
written.
item 3, line 3, options to the River Parks Committee / and or it can just say and or council.
And or directly to council.
You've got that, Amy?
Oh, I think it, or do you want the word directly there?
Because then they can
And or directly to council.
Sorry, so we have design
Did Amy
options
have
to
this?
the River Parks Committee.
It's not the same.
And or.
Yeah, but that's on your piece of paper, so you,
No, I'm
that-
just
yeah,
reading the officer recommendation.
yeah.
So I'm inserting
And or directly to council.
the Parks Committee members and or directed to council.
Yeah,
You're going to reinsert consultation.
yeah.
Okay.
So
That would
put
become
that
6
all-
again.
Yeah, so I'm just reading off what's in the agenda now, not what's on the piece of paper, so people don't have to do like renumbering. Okay, so then item number 7, there's going to be a bit of a change to this one. So maybe I'll read out the whole item. So bear with me. So requests town officers ask GHD to consider. Okay, so that bit's there. So water sensitive urban design options.
What number are we looking at?
7.
Yeah, 7 on your agenda. That maximise
These numbers.
effective utilisation of storm and groundwater.
You okay, Amy?
I think so.
Now just trying to keep up with the numbering.
So all of that
9.
that says design options that creates well type
Yeah,
voices, that's
delete.
all coming out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then if we go to point number 9.
So 8 remains as is.
Yeah. Sorry. So in item number 9, instead of the word information, which is in the 3rd line, change that to undertaking. So then,
Which is minimal. It's nothing. You don't have to worry about it.
okay, I won't worry about that.
Down to 15.
Okay, so down to 15. So I'll read the whole of 15 and then just let you know when the new words come in, if that's okay, hopefully.
I have a question.
Do you want to ask it first?
Yeah, if I could. So there's 17 recommendations here, and I don't know if I'm following the meeting correctly. I can see there's 7 recommendations. Is it? Or the sorry.
Because there were 2
8.
different items that were
voted
on.
Oh,
and come
8.2.
together
I
in a
see.
big-
Okay, 8.3. Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
15.
Yeah, so then 15, is it 15 on it? Sorry, I'm reading.
Well,
off
it's the
15.
renumbered. It was
Yep.
16.
Okay. Requests Town of Bassendean staff, so these words are already there. Improve the processes and procedures around turf management of town's parks, reserves and street verges. So all those words are there. And then to add, to reflect best practice when mowing, to maintain a grass height that reduces soil erosion, comma, moisture loss, and grass clippings.
Grass clipping pollution.
No, and then it just keeps going with what's already there, which is with a view to minimising the pollution, etc. So, yeah, so that's the proposed amendment.
And 17 remains the same?
Yes, 17.
Okay, so I think there's a few questions. So Councillor Gangel first, then Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you. It's just a general question really on the committee. I note that it started thereabouts at 3 o'clock and didn't finish until thereabouts 6 o'clock. That's a 3-hour meeting. The functionality of the committee. I mean, I've heard varying reports, and I just want to flag that 3-hour meetings. In this format, I'm not sure that it's that productive or workable. So I'm just wondering, maybe the presiding person, maybe one or your worship. I don't know who.
I think that's one of the reasons we've been having some conversations around committees in general.
Yeah, I think we've definitely
effectively
all been kind of noting and discussing that. And
okay.
So Councillor Wilson, you had a question specifically?
Just to indicate that I'd be happy to second the motion as amended if Councillor Mikitchook would consider a slight change to the wording in item 6.
Sure, what do you propose?
So request that town officers, and then we replace after that words to now read, inform the working party of the Whadjuk people of the nature of the problem at Success Hill and seek their guidance, and then return back to with respect to the Success Hill project.
So you might need to repeat that, but
okay, so
maybe if Melissa's happy with that.
So the whole of item 6 would now read, request that town officers inform the working party of the Whadjuk people of the nature of the problem at Success Hill and seek their guidance with respect to the Success Hill project.
Yes, that sounds okay. Do the officers have any comment on that?
The only thing is that normally we do provide some type of information to the Aboriginal communities as to what we're going to do. At the moment we don't have a formal anything to go to them with as a set of drawings or any ideas about what we're going to do.
Yes, but
so I know you're asking us to kind of meet with them to ask for their opinion, but we actually don't have anything to come with.
I'll read it again. So it says, to inform the working party of the Whadjuk people of the nature of the problem at Success Hill. So you would go and say, this is the problem that's here.
Yeah.
Do you have any views about how we go about fixing this problem? Okay. And take those views into account before finalising the response.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
So that's incorporated into the motion. Councillor Gans, you had a question?
It may be a very trivial point, but I will ask Councillor Wilson.
Councillor Wilson?
If he's aware, you just use the terminology Whadjuk, and I know one of the committee members, Joan Bremer, has differing views in relation to that. I think the Swan Valley, there's a Swan Valley group as well. So I'm just flagging that. It might be a very trivial matter, but I'm just letting you know that wording. I think there is differing views about who should be consulted.
Yes. And I thank Councillor Gangel for his observation and the question that leads. There is only one registered native title claim group for this area, and that is the Whadjuk people. They are the only group that has passed the threshold registration test, and the state government has also entered into an Indigenous land use agreement with them, which is currently before the courts for ratification. So the people that Jane Bremer is referring to are also members of the Whadjuk people working group, so they would be included.
Okay, thank you. I just had a query about 16 about the best practice turf management. Would staff have enough direction with the way that's worded about what is actually expected to be delivered?
Yes, I had a conversation with Councillor Mitchell earlier. Currently our mowing heights are approximately 40 millimetres. Obviously the land is not necessarily always even, so sometimes there has been occasions that I've observed as well where we've actually sculpted the grass. And so I understand where the motion was proposed, they want to raise the height so we don't do the sculpting, and so there's left with some material, grass on the surface areas of the dry grass areas, so that's providing some cover.
So the other references to clippings and moisture, I think, that's all.
Clippings and moisture would be subject to probably picking up the clippings. We actually don't do that. None of our machinery actually has any of that capacity. There'd be a cost of actually retrofitting our equipment, and then of course the cost of collecting and disposal of that with the number of hectares that we currently have and we're mowing.
So if this was passed, you would need to look at retrofitting our equipment in order to.
It would require probably, I would suggest another report would need to be brought back to council to provide some type of estimate about what it's going to cost in labour hours to number one, pick up, change the machinery, and then labour hours to have the material collected and then disposed of.
Okay, thank you. And a similar question.
Or turned into compost or whatever we want to do with it. I mean, the material in some cases, I appreciate where the material is placed onto the ground. Sometimes, of course, it has other weed seeds in it, so that generate further weeds, but it's also adding to the organic matter as well as it breaks down.
Okay, and my other question was around 17. So the request for testing, I don't know what this chemical is. Is that something that will have a significant cost associated with it?
No, look, we're already doing some water. We do water monitoring for all of our reserves. I don't know what specifically how much that would cost, but look, I can't imagine it being a huge cost to add to our list of water testing.
Thank you.
Just my understanding from Jeremy's comments were that it already occurred,
Yeah,
so I didn't. And just for people's information for the previous one, didn't want to be too prescriptive. Like we could have put a height there, but I guess it was to allow officers within their scope to implement what was possible without asking for something that was unrealistic.
That's fine. I just wanted to clarify that there was enough information for them to be able to deliver something that
I was conscious of that too.
Okay, so we've got the committee. Sorry, we've got the we've got the committee recommendation with the amendments proposed by Councillor Mikachuk and the addition from Councillor Wilson. So you had moved the motion. Did we have a seconder already? Councillor Wilson. Is there anybody against? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. So item 1021, implementation of council resolutions. Are you okay?
I've just got two.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Councillor Hamilton.
Just got two very quick queries. Okay, on page 81, third from the bottom, we've got unauthorised front fence. Because that was being dealt with tonight, I flagged whether that should be, but we've already dealt with that, so I'm assuming that can come out. The last one, the bottom one, Water Corporation drainage for livability.
Yeah, it was deferred.
Sorry?
It was deferred.
Oh, that's right.
Yep. So Amy, we're looking at RAC 18/64786 being removed.
64786.
So if it's been deferred, should we just leave that in there until?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
The bottom one is Water Corporation drainage for livability program. I don't know that should come out yet because we haven't actually done anything.
Okay, so RAC 17/53982.
Yeah, and that's it.
Okay, so I move for the officer recommendation with those two items being retained. Councillor Hamilton, seconded Councillor Wilson. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Okay, so moving on to confidential items. Do you have a mover to go behind closed doors? Councillor Hamilton, seconded Councillor Ganjul. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Just need to switch off the recording, please, Graham.